Venat saw a truth in the Aetherial Sea's depths that shattered Aetheres. His palm hovers over Elpis, a god fractured into 13 shards. Below, souls churn not water, but unmoored voices threading through the void. A primal stirs, its shape a jagged mirror of wholeness. Metei's pupils contract. A name surfaces in static, Meteion. The sundering was no creation, it was a cage. The sea hungers, always. For always Aetherial 13 Sea devours shards such fragments, not as rest, not as peace. Its tides are a chokehold on the irreparably broken. Those whose essence splinters beyond reassembly drift there, voiceless, holeless. The sea does not cradlate constricts. Each ripple is a throat closing around what once breathed, and yet some echoes refuse to fade. A whisper clings where no source remains. Why? What force binds a shadow to its absence? The hunger Meteion feeds is not for power, it is for silence. For every soul it cannot consume, the sea waits for the next fracture, the next echo, the next name. The Aetherial Sea does not cradle souls, it devours them. Encyclopedia Aetherial entry 412 confirms, souls unclaimed by rebirth are not lost, they are folded. Fractured echoes trapped in dynamic static. The final days began when Meteion's return ruptured this equilibrium. Dynamic spilled, souls unraveled. The sea, once passive, now hungered. The sundering revealed this truth. As the Ascians sought to rejoin Hydaelyn's fragments, they encountered resistance. Not from light, but from absence. Souls too shattered to rebind prisoners of their own incompleteness. Metei's notes, recovered in Ulda's archives, describe these entities as voids wearing faces. They do not rot. They unmake. Azim's research in the Shroud suggests the rejoining project failed not due to Zodiark's interference, but due to the sea itself. Every soul pulled from dynamics left a vacancy, a hunger. The sea fills these gaps not with peace, but with consumption. Meteion's mistake was not his return, it was his assumption the sea would remain dormant. What becomes of a name erased from all memory? The sea keeps it, a cipher, a wound, until dynamics stirs again, until another fracture calls, until the next soul is forgotten. The Aetherial Sea is the dimensional reservoir souls return to upon death. This is written in the Encyclopedia Aetherial. Souls here do not drift. They do not dream, they are held, awaiting a rejoining that may never come. Some souls are whole. They are drawn back to life through the will of the Aether. Others are broken beyond mending. Their essence fractures into echoes. These fragments cannot be reborn, they cannot be erased. They linger. The sea does not reject them, it consumes them. A silent prison of half-formed longing. No walls, no chains, only the weight of an existence that refuses to end. What happens to a soul that cannot be rejoined? It becomes a cipher, a wound in the fabric of the Aether. It repeats its final moments on loop, a hunger, a whisper. A shadow that cannot cross back. The Encyclopedia Aetherial calls this state liminal, a technical term for being neither alive nor dead. For the trapped it is a slow unraveling. For the sea it is a necessary burden. The Aetherial Sea is not a place of peace. It is a ledger, a vault, a graveyard of forgotten names, until dynamics stirs again, until another fracture calls, until the next soul is forgotten. The Aetherial Sea does not weep, it does not mourn. Its surface, a mirror of fractured constellations, holds the echoes of a million unspoken names. Venat's sundering did not merely cleave Aetheris, it carved a wound that bled eternity. The source, once whole, now hums with absence. The 13 reflections, sharp as shattered glass, each hold a shard of what was. To die in this age is to be torn, limb and memory alike, scattered across reflections that reject your completeness. You are not reborn. You are not at rest, you are a chorus of ghosts singing in dissonant fragments. Souls trapped here do not decay, they do not fade. They become the sea's architecture. Listen, can you hear the whisper in the tides? It is the dead reaching for their missing halves. A mother's voice in one reflection, a child's laughter in another, a lover's sigh in a third. None can touch, none can cross. The sea's prison is not iron or shadow, it is the weight of asterisk, almost asterisk. To survive here is to hunger for a body you no longer have, to remember a life you cannot relive. The Ascians knew this hunger. They carved their experiments from it. They sought to stitch the reflections back into the source, to unmake the sundering's price. But every soul they bound to their machinations paid double. The more they reached, the more the sea swallowed, their own names now among the lost. For what is a god but a soul too arrogant to accept its fragment? The sea does not forget, it does not forgive, it only holds. And waits for the next fracture, for the next soul, for the hands that will try to mend what should never be whole again. The Ascians preach their hymns of rejoining, blind to the sea's gnashing teeth. They call the source a cradle, a womb for souls reborn. But what of those the sea devours whole? The final days answered that. Meteion's fractured return did not summon salvation, it unchained dynamis raw and ravenous. Aether once balanced now roared like a storm, stripping flesh from bone, spirit from shadow. The convocation schism birthed this, a god torn between salvation and annihilation, now both. The Aetherial Sea does not weep for the damned, it swallows them. The purest souls, the most whole, are its first feast. When dynamis runs unchecked, even Hythlodaeus light bends to the sea's hunger. The Ascians claim the sea imprisons only the broken, but what of the unbroken? What of the souls who never sinned, who never fractured? They vanish. Not reborn, not resting, erased. Their essence becomes the sea's fuel, a cycle of consumption masked as renewal. The rejoining project was never a cure. It was a bandage on a wound that bled into the void. The Ascians' hymns echo through the Amarat's halls, but the sea's answer is silence. No sanctuary there, only the weight of endless dark, the whisper of souls dissolving into static. Meteion's return proved it, even a god's purity is no shield. The final days were not an aberration, they were a warning. The sea does not judge, it selects. The fractured, they are its prisoners, the whole. Its prey, and when the next fracture comes, when the next soul is thrust into its maw, the sea will not mend, it will feast, again. And again, until not even the source remains. The Aetherial Sea does not hold the dead, it holds what remains when a soul's fragments are too shattered to rejoin. They drift unwhole, their essence eroding like sand against the tides of the source. The deeper question remains, what becomes of a thing that is neither alive nor dead, but a hunger that cannot be fed? The sea swells. The cycle turns, and still Venat's voice lingers. We are not the end. The Aetherial Sea does not cradle the dead, it devours them. Its tides are not water, but a hunger that gnaws at the edges of the soul, a hunger named dynamis. When a spirit fractures beyond mending, dynamis seeps into its cracks, not a punishment, not a reward, a law. The 13th reflection knew this law. Its sorrow, sharp as a blade, carved itself into the sea. What became voidsent was not a god, not a hero. A husk shell where emotion had burned away, leaving only the physics of despair. You have seen its eyes in pandemonium's echoes, hollow, gleaming, a mirror to the void, but there is a counterforce, faint, flickering, the echo. It is not a weapon, not a relic, a scar, a thread of Venat's will woven into the fabric of the sea, resisting dynamis' cold calculus. To touch it is to feel the weight of 1,000 memories, not as light, but as anchor. The Aetherial Sea swallows, yes. But the echo whispers, not all is lost. Imagine a soul suspended in that endless blue, its edges fraying, dynamis coils around it, patient. The soul's own pain becomes a language, a fuel. The sea speaks in that language. It asks, will you become me? And most answer yes. Their forms dissolve into the current, becoming part of the sea's endless hunger. But some rare, stubborn things clutch at the echo. They feel Venat's ghost in their bones, a memory of fire, of a voice that once roared, I am. This is why the dead never return. Not all souls are meant to. The Aetherial Sea is a graveyard of near gods, of heroes who faltered, of love that outlasted its object. The echo is the only key. To resist dynamis is to bear Venat's burdento, carry the weight of a memory that refuses to die. What does it mean, this sliver of hope, that even in the sea's silence there is a pulse, a rhythm older than the cycle? A truth etched in the bones of the Aether, we are not the end, The Aetherial Sea does not cradle, it devours. Souls shattered beyond rejoining drift here, their fragments dissolving into the cold, endless tide. No stars pierce this abyss, no shores await, only pressuria await that gnaws at memory, at identity, until even the shape of a self erodes. Here the dead are not lost, they are unmade, yet within this silence a pulse endures, the echo. A whisper not of the sea, but against it. It thrums in the marrow of those who once heard Venat's voice, the first eon song that bound the cycles of life and death. To remember that melody is to hold a lantern in the dark. It does not save, it only delays the inevitable. The echo lets a soul cling to its edges, to hum a counterrhythm against the sea's hunger, but the sea is patient. Even a remembered song fades, even a lantern drowns. The dead never return because they are no more. Dynamis, the raw force that fuels rebirth, does not resurrect. It consumes asterisk. A soul's essence is stripped, its spark scattered to kindle new lives. Others, those the cycle rejects, are left to drift between reflections' liminal space where shadows of the living flicker. Here they mimic, they ache, they watch. But they cannot cross back. The veil is one way. The Aetherial Sea is not a resting place. It is a ledger of failures. Every soul trapped here is a debt unpaid, a fragment of the cycle's ledger left to rot. The sea's rhythm is not a hymn. It is a tally, and when the cycle turns again, these debts are either burned away or buried deeper. We are not the end. But for some, the end is a prison, and the prison is endless. The Aetherial Sea does not weep. Its tides hold no mercy for souls split too thin to mend. They drift, half-formed, in a void that forgets even hunger. The sea is not death, it is the absence of passing on. The warrior walked its mirrors not to conquer, but to carry. Each ripple a face, each face a debt unpaid. Meteion's final breath was not a defeat. It was a hand offered to a soul that had forgotten how to hope. Scions bear this weight now. Not as heroes, but as witnesses. Every prayer they lift is a thread, stitching fractures in a fabric too worn to hold. Love in this place is not a flame, it is a balm for wounds that never scar. Meteion's prison was not built by malice. It is the shape of balance remains when light and dark grind each other to dust. The final days did not end with victory. They ended with a question: what survives when the ledger is full? The sea's silence is the answer. Mortals name it fate. The dead know it as the weight of a promise unkept. The warrior's path was never about closing the gate. It was about carrying the gate's shadow forward, and so the sea waits, not for but for the next hand to touch its glass. And the next, until even memory dissolves, until the prison becomes the only truth left to remember. The Aetherial Sea breathes, its surface ripples not with water, but with unspoken names. Each wave carves a face into the glass flickering, fragile, forgotten. Here the dead do not rot, they fracture. Their echoes cling to the void's edges, half-formed prayers trapped in the world's marrow. The warrior of light stands at Ultima Thule, shadow stretched thin by a dying sun. Their hand hovers above the sea, palm upturned, as if cradling a star that has gone out. The air hums with static, iron on the tongue, ash that refuses to cool. Meteion watches not villain, not savior, but a fulcrum of balance too vast for mortal scales. Her form shimmers, a prism of every soul she has ever bound. The warrior does not strike, does not beg. They offer a silence deeper than the sea itself, a silence that says, I carry your weight, the sea shudders. 1,000 voices rise, not in rage or sorrow, but in quiet recognition. These are the lost who could not cross the veil, hearts splintered under too many lives, too many deaths. Their prison is not Hydaelyn's cruelty, nor Zodiark's hunger. It is the price of existing between worlds. The warrior's whisper cuts through the cacophony. To walk through life unafraid is a gift. The words hang, a thread of light spun from their being. For a moment the sea stills. Faces freeze in expressions neither joyful nor pained, but whole. The echoed living memory of every soul who refused to break twists upward, a helix of fire and shadow. It is not salvation, it is a choice. To remember, to be remembered, the warrior steps back. Their form blurs, dissolves, becomes another thread in the tapestry. The sea resumes its churn. The prison remains, but in its depths a new current stirs. A whisper not of hope, but of proof that even the fractured can choose how they are seen. The camera pulls away. The Aetherial Sea stretches into infinity, a mirror to the void, and somewhere in the quiet between heartbeats the echo sings. What if your voice lingered after the body falls silent? The Aetherial Sea does not cradle souls, it cages them. Those shattered beyond rebirth drift here, fragments humming with the memory of wholeness. The echo outlasts the source. Why? Because longing is a force beyond reckoning. A soul's final breath does not vanish. It warps, twists into a hymn that binds the broken to the void. You might call it a prison. You might call it a dirge, or perhaps what if the echo is not a remnant but a reaching? A tether cast backward through time, pleading for a thread to grasp. The sea does not answer, it never has. Yet here we are, staring into its depths, wondering if our whispers might one day